Hello, lovelies. Welcome back. I know it has been a long time. I'm so sorry for that. But I finally am here with another video for you guys. If this is your first time here, hi, my name is Jessica. I do stories on usually like silent film stars or people that were on the Titanic. This one's a little bit different today. She was a silent film star to start out with, but you would mostly know her more into the 30s and a little bit into the 40s. She was one of the top comedic actresses of the 1930s and the queen of screwball comedy. Of course, today we are talking about the life of Carole Lombard. Carole Lombard was originally born Jane Alice Peters on October 6, 1908 in Fort Wayne, Indiana, into a wealthy family at the home of 704 Rock Hill Street. She was the third child and only daughter of parents Frederick Christian Peters and Elizabeth Jane Bessie Peters. Both of Lombard's parents came from wealthy families, and she lived her early life in comfort. Her parents' marriage was strained, and in October of 1914, her mother took the children and moved to Los Angeles. Her parents would never divorce, but the situation was permanent. With her father's financial support, the family continued to live without worry, and they settled in an apartment near Venice Boulevard in Los Angeles. I know she has a different name for the earlier part of her life, but I'm just going to continue calling her either Carole or Lombard just to not get it too confusing. Lombard was a bit of a tomboy. She participated in tennis, volleyball, and swimming at Virgil Junior High School, and she enjoyed watching movies. Then, while playing baseball with friends at age 12, she caught the attention of film director Alan Dwayne Dwan, something like that. Sorry, I'm bad at pronouncing names sometimes, I apologize. Who later recalled seeing a cute-looking little tomboy out there knocking the hell out of the other kids, playing better baseball than they were, and I needed someone of her type for this picture. Lombard would take the small part in 1921's A Perfect Crime, playing the sister of Monte Blue. Again, bad at pronouncing names, I apologize. Dwan later commented she ate it up. The experience had Lombard and her mother looking for more film work. While appearing as the queen in Fairfax High School's May Day Carnival at the age of 15, Lombard was offered a screen test by an employee of Charlie Chaplin to appear in his film The Gold Rush. She did not get the role, but the screen test would raise awareness to her talent. Her test was seen by a Vitagraph film company who expressed interest in signing her. This did not materialize, but the condition was that she adopt a new first name, as Jane was considered too dull. She selected Carole after a girl she used to play tennis with in middle school. In October of 1924, 16-year-old Lombard was signed to a contract with Fox Film Corporation. She was signed to a $75 per week contract. She abandoned her schooling to pursue her new career. It was where she became Carole Lombard. The new surname was adopted from that of a family friend. Carole had mostly bit parts in the beginning with Fox in westerns and low-budget adventure films. She later commented that she was dissatisfied with these roles. All I had to do was simper prettily at the hero and scream with terror when he would battle the villain. Lombard was also a bit of a party girl and embraced the flapper lifestyle and became a regular at the Coconut Grove nightclub and won several Charleston dance competitions. On September 9th of 1927, Lombard was on a date with a man named Harry Cooper. That night, as they were driving down Santa Monica Boulevard, Cooper crashed into another car. The windshield shattered and shards of glass. It would cut Lombard's face from the nose to across her left cheek. Lombard was rushed to the hospital to undergo emergency surgery. And what is really scary and kind of cool about her is that she undergone the surgery without any anesthesia, because it was due to a now debunked rumor or medical opinion that muscle relaxers would cause permanent scarring. So that's pretty badass of her, I think, that, she went you know, got surgery with all that pain, but didn't have any numbing. So that makes her pretty cool in my book, I believe. And the surgery was a success, but Lombard would have permanent scarring visible for the rest of her life. But it was just, she hid it well, because for the remainder of her career, she learned to hide the scar with makeup and then careful lighting. And I apologize, I'm just gonna be a moment because the trash men are outside my house right now, making a lot of noise, grabbing the trash. Lombard and her mother sued Cooper for $35,000 in damages, citing in a lawsuit where she formerly was able to earn a salary of $300 monthly as a Senate girl. She is now unable to obtain employment of any kind. The lawsuit was settled out of court and Lombard received $3,000. Lombard feared that the accident would end her career, but Sennett pledged to help her recover. Although Lombard initially had reservations about performing in slapstick comedies, she joined Sennett's company as one of Sennett's bathing beauties. She appeared in 18 short films between September of 1927 and March of 1929, and she enjoyed her time at the studio. Later in 1940, she recalled her Sennett years as the turning point of my acting career. Pathé Exchange Inc. was owned by Joseph P. Kennedy, and if that name sounds familiar, yes, he was the father of future President John F. Kennedy. And they distributed Sennett's productions, and the company began casting Lombard in feature films in 1928. She had prominent roles in Showfolks and Ned McComb's Daughter, and reviewers observed that she made a good impression and was worth watching. In the last movies with Pathé, or Pat, again, trouble with wording, apologies. But Carol was elevated from supporting player to leading lady. By now, the film industry was mining from the silent film eras to talkies. In 1929's High Voltage, Lombard would be cast in her first sound film. She played a criminal in the custody of a deputy sheriff, of whom are among bus passengers stranded in deep snow. Her next film, Big News, was a critical and commercial success. In 1930, Lombard returned to Fox for a one-off role in the western Arizona Kid. Following the success of the film, Paramount Pictures recruited Carol Lombard in a $350 per week contract that would gradually increase to $3,500 per week by 1936. Then in 1930, she made Safety in Numbers and Fast and Loose. Then in 1931, Lombard appeared in 5 films, and with 2 of those films, she would be featured with William Powell, who was Paramount's top male star in the movies Man of the World and Ladies' Man. Carol had been a big fan of the actor before they met, and during filming, they got to know each other more, and it came to no surprise, on June 26, 1931, Lombard married Powell at Carol's Beverly Hills home. She was 22 and Powell was 38. The marriage to Powell increased Lombard's fame, while she continued to please critics with her work in 1931's Up Pops the Devil and I Take This Woman. Several critics would predict that Carol Lombard would become the next big star. Her next film in 1932 had her starring with Clark Gable in No Man of Her Own. The film was a critical and commercial success. 1933 was another great year for Lombard. She appeared in 5 films, which were From Hell to Heaven, Supernatural, her only horror film, The Eagle and the Hawk, Brief Moment, and White Woman. But in August of 1933, Lombard and Powell would divorce after just 26 months of marriage. But luckily, they would remain good friends for the rest of their lives. At the time, she blamed it on both of their careers, but in a 1936 interview, she admitted that this had little to do with the divorce. We were just two completely incompatible people. In 1934, Lombard was involved romantically with Russ Colombo, who was a famous crooner. And on September 2nd of 1934, Colombo and a longtime friend photographer, Lansing Brown, were examining Brown's collections of firearms when one of them discharged. The bullet ricocheted off of a nearby table and hit Colombo above his left eye. Surgeons at Good Samaritan Hospital tried to remove the bullet from Colombo's brain, but he died less than 6 hours after the shooting. Colombo's death was ruled an accident, and Brown was exonerated from blame. But Colombo was just 26 years old when he passed away. Poor Carol was grief-stricken and hounded by reporters. Other press outlets had reported on their relationship earlier that year, with Screenland magazine declaring the Russ Colombo and Carole Lombard romance as one of Hollywood's most charming. 1934 would mark a high point in Carol's career. She was to appear in many films which were financially successful, and she was considered to have great praise. One of the films was 20th Century, which proved a watershed for her career and made her a major star. In 1935, she starred in Hands Across the Table, which she portrayed a manicurist in search of a rich husband, played by Fred MacMurray. It's remembered as one of her best films, and the pairing of Lombard and MacMurray seemed to be so successful that they went on to star in 3 more movies together. Lombard's first film of 1936 was Love Before Breakfast. Her next film, The Princess Comes Across, was her next pairing with MacMurray. She plays a budding actress who wins a film contract by masquerading as a Swedish princess. It was considered a great satire of Greta Garbo and was praised by critics. Then she was recruited by Universal Studios to star in one of my favorite films of hers, My Man Godfrey. Howe, who played Godfrey, insisted on Carol being the leading lady in this movie. He felt she would be perfect for the role of Irene, a zany heiress who employs Godfrey as a butler, one of the many people whose lives were ruined during the crash of 1929. My Man Godfrey was released to great acclaim and was a box office success. It received 6 Academy Award nominations, including Lombard for Best Actress. By 1937, Lombard was one of Hollywood's most popular actresses, and she was a fashion icon. She was also the highest paid star with a salary of $450,000, more than 5 times the salary of the US president. Lombard stated that 80% of her earnings went towards taxes. She said that she was more than happy to help improve her country. Her comments earned her positive feedback, and President Franklin D. Roosevelt sent her a personal letter of thanks. Her first release of 1937 was Swing High, Swing Low, which would be her 3rd film starring with MacMurray. For her next project, Nothing Sacred, producer David O. Selznick was eager to make a comedy with the actress and hired Ben Hecht to write an original screenplay for her. Lombard portrays a small-town girl who pretends to be dying and finds her story exploited by a New York reporter. The film satirized the journalism industry and the gullible urban masses. Marking her only appearance in Technicolor, the film was highly praised and was one of Lombard's personal favorites. Her last film made on a Paramount contract was True Confessions, one of her wackiest films. She played a compulsive liar who wrongly confesses to murder. The film reunited her with John Barrymore and was her final appearance with Fred MacMurray. The film had critics responding positively, and it was popular at the box office. After Paramount, Lombard would remain an independent performer for the rest of her career. Despite her ambition and success, she was down to earth, good-natured, and generous. There's nothing remotely snobbish about Lombard. She was generous and kind on and off the stage with the film crew members. From what I've read and watched while researching her, it just seems like she was a very kind soul and would pretty much just give you the shirt off of her back. You know, she would help anyone out, whether she knew them or not, and that's one of the reasons that made me love Carole Lombard even more while researching her. In 1938, her next film was made at Warner Brothers, where she played a famous actress in Fools for Scandal. It was met with scathing reviews and was a commercial flop. It would be the only film she would make that year. That would be because by this time, Lombard was devoted to her relationship with Clark Gable. About 4 years after their teaming on No Man of Her Own, the pair had reunited at a Hollywood party and began a romance in 1936. Gable boasted to his friends that she was one woman in a billion and he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. The media took great interest in their relationship and treated them to celebrity super couple. Gable was separated from his wife, Rhea Langham, but she did not want to grant him a divorce. But as his relationship with Lombard became more serious, Langham would finally agree to the settlement of $500,000. In 1938, Lombard joined the Baha'i Faith, which her mother had been a member of since 1922. In March of 1939, the divorce was finalized, so Gable and Lombard eloped to Kingsman, Arizona on March 29th of that same year. The couple, both lovers of the outdoors, bought a 20-acre ranch in San Fernando Valley, California, where they got a bunch of animals, and they were also enjoyed hunting trips. Living there, they weren't Hollywood socialites and they weren't glamorous. They just wanted the simple life. And I found this so cute when I read this, but they named each other Ma and Paul. Isn't that so cute? And they were role modeled as the ideal marriage. Almost immediately, Lombard wanted to start a family, but her attempts failed. Sadly, after 2 miscarriages and numerous trips to the fertility specialist, Lombard was unable to have children. While continuing with a slower work rate, Lombard decided to move away from comedies and return to dramatic roles. In 1939, she appeared in Made for Each Other, which paired her with Jimmy Stewart to play a couple facing domestic difficulties. Reviews for the film were positive and praised Lombard's dramatic efforts, but financially it was a disappointment. Next, Carole Lombard would be paired up with Cary Grant in the film In Name Only. The role reflected her recent experiences as she played a woman in love with a married man whose wife refuses a divorce. In 1940, her next film was Vigil in the Night, which featured Lombard as a nurse who faces a series of personal difficulties. That same year, she was also in They Knew What They Wanted, which was mildly successful. In 1941, she began filming To Be or Not to Be, a dark comedy that satirized the Nazi takeover of Poland. This was to be Lombard's final film. When the U.S. entered World War II at the end of 1941, Lombard traveled to the home state of Indiana for a war bond rally with her mother, Bess Peters, and Clark Gable's press agent and good friend, Otto Winkler. Lombard raised more than $2 million in defense bonds in a single evening. They had initially been scheduled to return to Los Angeles by train, but Lombard was eager to return home quickly and wanted to fly. Her mother and Winkler were both afraid of flying and insisted the group follow the original travel plans. That's when Lombard suggested that they flip a coin. They agreed, and Lombard won the toss. In the early morning hours of January 16, 1942, Lombard, her mother, and Winkler boarded the small aircraft. After refueling in Las Vegas, TWA Flight 3 took off and crashed into Double Peak near Potosi Mountain. It was 32 miles southwest of the Las Vegas airport. Clark Gable, immediately learning about the plane crash, rushed to the site. He spent the morning struggling towards the peak while his friends begged him to stay behind. Hours later, they led him down the trail and brought him to the hotel in Las Vegas. He paced the floor for hours. Sadly, it was 2 days before Carole Lombard's body could be brought down from the mountain. Clark Gable would return home by train with the bodies of his wife, his mother-in-law, and his best friend. Lombard and her mother's funeral was held on January 21st at Forest Lawn Memorial Park Cemetery in Glendale, California. They were interred beside each other, and Carole Lombard was only 33 years old when she died. Shortly after Lombard's death, Gable joined the United States Army Air Forces. After officers' training, Gable headed a 6-man motion picture unit attached to a B-17 bomb group in England to film aerial gunners in combat, flying 5 missions by himself. Then in December of 1943, the United States Maritime Commission announced that a ship named after Carole Lombard would be launched. Then on January 15, 1944, Clark Gable attended the launch of the SS Carole Lombard. The ship was involved in rescuing hundreds of survivors from sunken ships in the Pacific and returning them to safety. Then in 1960, upon his sudden death by heart attack, Clark Gable's dying wish was to be laid beside his first true love, I believe, but he wanted to be laid beside Carole Lombard. His wish was granted, and they have remained the most iconic couple of the golden age of Hollywood. So that is all on Carole Lombard's story. I hope you really enjoyed it. I thought she had an amazing life. She was an amazing person. So I really hope that you enjoyed this, and maybe you'll go watch some of her movies. They are pretty great. But yeah, I just hope you guys enjoyed the video. And if you did, please hit that like button down below. And if you would like to see more of my videos in the coming future, hopefully I'll get them out. I want to get them out weekly, if not at least every other week. But yeah, hit that subscribe button down below, and I will see you guys all again in the next video. Bye guys.